crowd, through pain, through fear of rejection, and reached for the hem of his garment. That simple act of forward movement, fueled by faith, brought her healing. She did not wait for a sign. She did not wait for Jesus to notice her. She moved. And that movement changed everything. This is the essence of living by faith. It doesn't mean we never feel afraid, but it means we refuse to be ruled by that fear. Fear will build walls. Faith builds bridges. Fear freezes your steps. Faith drives you forward, even when the path seems impossible. Every miracle in Scripture was met by someone who moved before seeing the full picture. Abraham left his homeland. Moses stretched his staff over the sea. David ran toward Goliath. Peter stepped out onto the waves. The leper reached out to Jesus. Faith doesn't require perfect conditions. It thrives in impossibilities. It steps into uncertainty, not because the way is clear, but because the one who calls is trustworthy. Think of Ruth, who chose to follow Naomi into a foreign land with no promise of provision. She didn't have a plan, but she had faith, and that faith opened doors to a future she couldn't have imagined. Faith moves mountains, but only when we're willing to move with it. It's not passive. It's not waiting for signs in the sky. It's taking the next right step, trusting that God is already ahead of us. And even if your legs tremble, even if your heart is uncertain, every forward step in faith becomes a declaration. I believe in the one who goes before me. When the walls of Jericho loomed high and impenetrable, the people didn't storm the gates. They walked in obedience, silently, day after day, until the final shout brought those walls crashing down. It made no sense in the natural, but faith isn't built on natural logic. It's built on supernatural trust. Maybe you're facing walls today. Maybe you're staring at closed doors, deep waters, or overwhelming odds. Faith invites you to step forward anyway, not recklessly, not carelessly, but confidently, because God is not limited by circumstances. He specializes in turning impossibilities into testimonies. And remember, forward doesn't always mean fast. It might be slow, painful, even hesitant, but movement matters. Faith says, I don't have to see the whole picture. I just need to trust the one who paints it. When we choose to move with faith, we invite the miraculous into our journey. Even when progress feels small, heaven celebrates every step. The widow who gave her 2 coins, the blind man who called out to Jesus from the roadside, the friends who lowered the paralytic through the roof, each of them chose to move. They stepped beyond fear and into divine encounter. You're not alone in this walk of faith. Heaven watches. God walks with you. And with every step, the impossible becomes possible. So wherever you are, whatever you're facing, let faith move you forward. One step, then another, and then another. Because the ground beneath your feet is holy when walked by faith. And when your strength fails, when your heart grows weary, you're not expected to carry the journey alone. Faith isn't just your belief, it's also your resting place. Faith isn't just striving, it's surrender. It's saying, God, I trust you, even here, even now, even when I don't understand. When Elijah ran to the cave, weary and afraid, God didn't rebuke him. He whispered, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in the still, small voice. That's where faith often finds us, not in the roar, but in the quiet, in the stillness of surrender, in the whisper of divine reassurance. So, take courage. Keep walking. Let the whisper of faith carry you through the storms that scream. Let it anchor you when the waves rise. Let it lead you when fear demands you freeze. Faith isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to move anyway, because the one who called you is faithful. Now close your eyes and picture that mountain ahead, the one you've stared at for so long. It looks unshakable, immovable. But what if your step is the one that causes the ground to tremble? What if your shout is the one that brings the wall down? What if your act of obedience is the key to the miracle? Faith doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's a whisper. Sometimes it's a quiet yes. Sometimes it's just getting out of bed. But heaven sees it. God honors it, and miracles follow it. The storm doesn't need to stop for you to walk. The sea doesn't need to part for you to begin. The battle doesn't need to end for you to praise. Faith is walking when everything says sit, praising when everything says cry, believing when everything says give up. Because the God who spoke galaxies into being is still speaking today. And his word over your life is not void. It's alive, it's active, it's faithful. He has never failed, and he will not start now. Let that be the anthem of your heart. Not the voice of fear, not the scream of doubt, but the steady beat of faith. Forward. Always forward. Not because you have all the answers, but because you trust the one who does. And when you look back someday, you won't just see how far you've come. You'll see the footprints of a faithful God who walked with you every step of the way. Let faith move you, not because the path is easy, but because the promise is sure. Mark 5:28 says, "For she said, 'If only I may touch his clothes, I shall be made well.'" She pressed through the crowd, through pain, through fear of rejection, because faith moved her. And when she touched Jesus, immediately she was healed. Faith does not wait for permission. Faith reaches. Faith does not ask, "What if it doesn't work?" It says, "I believe it will." My friends, what step is God asking you to take? Maybe it's a step of forgiveness. Maybe it's starting something new. Maybe it's walking away from something that no longer aligns with his purpose for you. Whatever it is, fear will always try to hold you back, but faith will lead you forward. Like the priests stepping into the Jordan, like Abraham leaving the familiar, like the woman pressing through the crowd, faith acts. Faith obeys. Faith moves. Hebrews 11:6 reminds us, "But without faith it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him." Faith is not passive. It seeks, it pursues, it walks forward, trusting that God will meet every step with provision, power, and purpose. So today, I encourage you, do not stay stuck on the shore of hesitation. Step into the river, press through the crowd, leave the comfort zone. Because faith isn't just a belief, it's a movement. Now, prepare your heart. We are about to enter a powerful moment of prayer, a declaration of faith that will silence fear and stir the power of God into every area of your life. Faith moves forward, my friends, even when the path is unclear. Fear will make you look at the uncertainty ahead and want to stop. It will whisper, "Wait for a better time." It will tell you, "You don't have all the answers, so you should stay put." But faith, true faith, will propel you forward into the unknown, trusting in the one who knows the way. Consider Peter when he stepped out of the boat to walk on the water toward Jesus. His first step was filled with faith. His eyes were fixed on Jesus, and as long as he kept his eyes on Christ, he walked on water, something no one else dared to do. But the moment he took his eyes off Jesus and focused on the waves and wind, fear gripped him, and he began to sink. Matthew 14:30 says, "But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, 'Lord, save me.'" The moment he was consumed by fear, he lost his stability. But the good news, my friends, is that when he cried out, Jesus immediately stretched out his hand and caught him. When fear tries to drown you, call out to Jesus. He's always there to lift you up and keep you moving forward. Faith moves forward, even when it feels like everything around you is sinking. Look at David when he faced Goliath. Goliath was a giant warrior, trained for battle, but David didn't see a giant. He saw a man defying the armies of the living God. David didn't wait for the perfect moment. He took the slingshot and stepped forward, knowing that God would deliver him just as he had delivered him from the lion and the bear. 1 Samuel 17:37 says, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." David didn't need to wait for the giant to fall first. He moved forward in faith, and when he did, God brought the victory. That's what faith does. It moves first, trusting that God's promises are greater than the giants you face. The Israelites crossed the Jordan River in the same way. It was a daunting task, an overflowing river with a current too powerful to cross. But God asked the priests to step in first. As they did, the waters parted. Joshua 3:15-16 tells us, "And as those who bore the ark came to the Jordan, and the feet of the priest who bore the ark dipped in the edge of the waters which came down from upstream stood still and rose in a heap very far away, and the waters that went down into the sea of the Arabah, the Salt Sea, failed and were cut off." The miracle happened after they moved forward. Fear would have said, "Don't move until you see a dry path." But faith said, "Step in, and God will part the waters." And he did. What waters are you standing in front of today? What challenges seem impossible to overcome? Faith calls you to take the first step, not knowing exactly what will happen next, but trusting that God will make a way where there seems to be no way. Fear will hold you back. It will convince you to stay comfortable and safe. It will make you feel as if everything around you must be aligned for things to work out. But faith believes that God is the one who makes all things work together for good. And because of that, faith moves forward, trusting his timing and his ability to do the impossible. Look at Abraham, called by God to leave everything familiar behind and go to an unknown land. Genesis 12:1 says, "Now the Lord had said to Abram, 'Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you.'" Abraham didn't have all the details. He didn't know where the journey would end, but he obeyed. His faith didn't wait for the whole plan to unfold. It moved before the promise was fully realized. God often asks us to step out in faith, even when the destination is unclear. He doesn't always give us the full map, but he asks for our trust that he will lead us every step of the way. Abraham's faith led him into the promised land, just as your faith will lead you into your own promises, even if the path is not fully visible. Moving forward in faith is not about having all the answers. It's about trusting the one who holds them. It's about believing in the power of God to make the impossible possible. Consider Peter when he stepped out of the boat to walk on the water toward Jesus. His first step was filled with faith. His eyes were fixed on Jesus, and as long as he kept his eyes on Christ, he walked on water, something no one else dared to do. But the moment he took his eyes off Jesus and focused on the waves and wind, fear gripped him, and he began to sink. Matthew 14:30 says, "But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, 'Lord, save me.'" The moment he was consumed by fear, he lost his stability. But the good news, my friends, is that when he cried out, Jesus immediately stretched out his hand and caught him. When fear tries to drown you, call out to Jesus. He's always there to lift you up and keep you moving forward.